Welcome back to the Ethan Clerc podcast show. Great to be back here for big episode 99. We're almost to 100.
So close.
I know, it's crazy. And tonight we have a great guest on for you. His name's Terry Rich. He is the retired president and CEO of the Iowa Lottery. So that's pretty cool to have him on. He busted the largest lottery fraud case in U.S. history.
Unbelievable.
Also the author of 2 books. So it's great to have him on tonight. Got a bunch of questions for him. I'm really looking forward to having him on. Let's meet Terry.
And then
I remember.
It's not even the shape.
mentally ill.
A special effects agency. Terry, great to have you on here tonight. You just were talking right before the episode started, and you were talking about how you started in TV, and you were talking about MTV and CNN and ESPN. Talk briefly about that and how you got involved with those news companies.
You know, some days you're lucky. I went into college thinking I was going to be a math teacher. And about halfway through, I had a class that proved 1 was not equal to 0. And I thought, what the heck am I doing here? So a buddy said, why don't you go over here? You can talk and make a living. So I went to the TV and radio and journalism classes, and that's what I graduated in. All my buddies went to broadcast television. But at the time, they were just starting cable television around the country. And so I needed a job. I went to work for cable television. Now, little did I know that they couldn't pay me a lot, but they were paying me these things called stock options.
Oh,
and during that 20 years, we got to help start MTV and ESPN and all these. Everything we touch seemed to turn to gold. It was such an entrepreneurial company because you were rewarded even for failure. You were rewarded for success and failure, and ultimately cashed out at 40. And everything my dad told me that I'd have happiness when I turned 60 and got on Social Security, I had at 40. So it's kind of a weird deal. And I was saying, what do you do now? You know? So
Wait,
it was a fun experience. And the people we worked still today, we Zoomed together because it was such a fun, entrepreneurial, interesting company to work for.
Can you discuss what company this was at all?
It was a company called Heritage Communications. We had cable systems in San Jose, California. We owned Dallas, Texas, a few in Minnesota, South Bend, Indiana, Wilmington, Delaware. We were about the 10th largest at the time.
Wow.
And I started in cable in production with them when I came out of college, but ultimately became the ad sales manager, then the marketing manager, and then a general manager. And then the break of my life came in when I was 29. I got a call from my little hometown of 50 people, and they said, you know, we've never had a centennial in 100 years, so we're going to have one. Would you help us promote it? Because I was in marketing time and doing a little TV and radio. Sure. Well, little did I know that when we got together, they said, well, you're our most famous person because you've been on TV. And I thought, well, in 100 years, we haven't had a famous person. Let's adopt somebody. So we sent out a crazy press release. I'd never written a press release before. We sent out a press release that said, Cooper, Iowa wants to adopt someone. Now, we've got some criteria, and we'd ask them questions like, you ever chewed tobacco? You ever worn a pair of bib overalls? Do you know the difference between an apple pie and a cow pie? You know, crazy questions.
Yep.
And we gave away a free cemetery plot and a free oil and lube. I mean, we only had 50 people. It wasn't that big a town. So I sent it off to 44 different places. I made 44 copies. So I had to go to the next town's library to find other outlets. And you know what? We failed 43 of the 44 times. 43 of the letters didn't get any response. But the next morning, I got one call from this guy. He said, my name is Bruce Canner from United Press International. We like the story. It's kind of crazy. Can I get a couple quotes? And I didn't know what UPI was. So, okay. So I said a couple quotes. And a half hour to the minute, I get a call back. Said, hey, is this Terry Rich? I said, yeah, well, this is Jim McCauley. I'm a talent coordinator for Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
What?
And Johnny was born in Iowa, and we'd like to do something with us, but you got to promise that we're first. Hell yes. What do you say?
Yeah.
So yeah, we ultimately, they talked about uplinking the entire show from Cooper, Iowa, but ultimately took us to LA, and we got to be on Johnny Carson, and it replayed, I think on the Best of Carson was about 20 minutes, first part of the show. And all of a sudden 20 million people heard about this little town. Well, that helped me in the cable business. And so I came back and I started thinking, we do HBO free previews. Now, I don't know if you've ever turned on the TV one night and you're getting free HBO and you're thinking, hey, Marge, we're getting free HBO. Somebody must be messing with the cable outfit. You know?
Yeah.
Well, we were doing that on a basic channel. We'd take over a C-SPAN or some other channel on basic cable and give people on a weekend free HBO.
Mm.
And then at the end of the movie, we'd jump in and say, hey, if you like this, call now and you can get a free installation. Well, I was doing that in each town because each town has its own origination location, San Jose, and then fly to Texas, whatever. And I started thinking back to the Carson deal where we had failed 43 of the 44 times. And I thought, satellite, we can uplink from here. So I called HBO, my rep, and I said, hey, could we get a satellite uplink? Never been done in our state. And he said, no, what do you mean? And I thought, well, okay. But he said, you're a good client. Let me call so-and-so who called so-and-so. Ultimately, we got the head of technical, the VP of engineering at HBO. And he said, yeah, when would you like it? We can have it out there.
Wow.
So about 2 months later, we did the first HBO free preview to all of our systems via satellite, 23,500 miles up there and down. And we did $15 million in business because we failed all those times on the attempt of the Carson show. So that really helped my career ultimately. And that's what I did after we sold the cable company. I did that for all different cable companies and HBO and ESPN and pay-per-view over the next few years. So It's been a crazy life up through that age.
And this is just the beginning too, but I want to ask you this question because now it does not seem like TV has nearly as much power as it did 10, 15, 20 years ago. Can you kind of, after working in TV for however many years, what do you think it is that people just don't want to turn on the TV anymore? They'd rather watch Netflix or go online and watch something.
Well, I think it's the power of personal choice. You know, when in those days when we were selling cable TV, we only had 4 channels: ABC, CBS, NBC, and PBS. And I went door to door selling it, and they'd say, why do we need more than 4 channels? And why do I want to pay $6 more for more entertainment? Well, heck, everybody's paying $120 today. And people ultimately got to where they wanted on demand. They got all these channels, but they only enjoyed 3 or 4 or 5 of them. So it got to the point where they want to just pay for the channels that they're watching and not think that they're wasting their dollars by overpaying. And that's why I think Netflix and some of the others came in, really fit that niche to give you the basics and then pick the channels that you wanted.
It's just crazy to think how big it was and how much money it was making, and now it seems like it's kind of hanging on by a thread. And I don't know too much about TV, the market right now, but I can't imagine it's doing well with how things are moving, technologically speaking.
Well, if you think about it, I think the downfall to cable television and really the dish and that was ESPN's business model. ESPN wanted to get all of the sports, so they went out and paid these huge rights for the best teams. So you get the, UCLA or North Carolina and all those, you get those teams. And if you've got it on ESPN, the cable company or the dish or the satellite networks, DirecTV, they have to buy it, right? And then the network started charging cable television for those rights. And all of a sudden the programming rights got so high that you couldn't say no, so you had to charge it. So today, most of the cable companies don't make much money on their cable programming. They make it all on the internet services that they're selling.
So they're kind of evolving, but at the same time, they didn't go quick enough with it. They didn't keep up. So now it's just going to kind of fade away almost.
Well, that's a lesson in life. I don't care what you do, what you sell, what your business is today. It's going to change tomorrow. Our demographics are changing, much more diverse. Everything is so different. And that's why the idea of whatever it is, every day when I wake up and if I'm driving to go to the gym, the next day I want to see if I can beat that by a second or beat that by 3. How do you can always improve something by just a little bit more.
Yep.
And you got to try a few things and fail. I do a lot of speeches on success. I've been called the idea dude because I just love giving ideas, as many as possible. And they said, well, haven't you ever failed? Well, heck yes. I've not met a good CEO that has not failed many, many times, but they didn't let it get them down. And I tell the story of when I had a grandchild. I learned a lesson because she came over and she pulled herself up on the couch and took her first step. And guess what? Boom, she fell.
Yep.
And then what'd she do? She crawled over, got up, took 2 steps. Then what? Boom, she fell. And ultimately, she's running around all over the place. But it kind of teaches you that it's better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing. If you fail, many of us have a project. Everybody's got $1 million idea. In fact, if you'll ask me in a little bit, I'll tell you $2 million ideas I have that I haven't been able to figure out technically how to do them, but I know they'll make a lot of money if somebody just can grab it and do it. I'll give those ideas for free. But you got to keep trying, and that's where the success comes in. And I haven't met a CEO that hasn't had personal problems too. I'm in a breakfast club of all the top CEOs, insurance companies, and all these big investment firms. And when they get up and tell their story about their business and the successes and failures, every one of them says, "Yeah, and my second kid, they're just lost. They don't know what the heck they're doing." So nobody's perfect in this world. And if you think that's the way, the old happiness happens on the way to success, not if you say, if I could just get this project done this week, or if I can just do this one thing, then I know I'll be happy. No, it takes every day thinking about what makes you happy to make things good in life.
And I think we try to preach that message on the show all the time, that to succeed, you need to fail a ton of times, or you might, some people only fail once, some people fail a lot. We try to preach that all the time, that, learning is failing, and that's how you learn, is by making mistakes and learning from them. And so we preach that all the time. My question for you is, how do you go from TV guy to lottery guy? When does that transition come? So you're done with TV.
Even make it zoo guy. So
zoo guy,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was gonna say, wasn't Zoo in there?
Yeah, zoo was in the middle. I was a zoo dude at the time. I start, cable television, we cash out. What do? I'm thinking I'm retiring. I'm going to go play golf. And I just got bored, because once you've had success, you're always looking for the jazz of making the deal and having some fun with it. So I started my own company, and we did these free HBO previews. I produced a whole bunch of different shows, including a show called Soccer Slam, which is full contact indoor soccer. We built it around WWF, and we got it on Fox Sports World and on Galavision. But ultimately, turning 50, I'm on the road all the time. I made the money. I got all the frequent flyer points I wanted. And I guess maybe it was midlife crisis. I don't know. It was something. I thought, I got to do something different. I wanted to give baby back to the community somehow. And so I got a call from an ex-governor, said, "Hey, the city's about ready to run the zoo in the ground, and we're going to take it over as a nonprofit. Would you be interested in running it?" I grew up on a farm. What the heck's different between a giraffe and a cow? Okay. So we use the same techniques that I learned in that real entrepreneurial company about trying new things, and basically took the zoo from a $600,000 a year deficit to operating in the black, and then raised $13 million. So just the interest off the money we raised will keep the zoo in business forever. Even in the pandemic, it really helped out in those.
Wow.
But the message in that is that, again, we failed a few in some of the ideas, but I figured, kids go, if you've got a 2 to 10-year-old, you're going to go to the zoo, but you got to have other demographics come into the zoo to enjoy it. And so, of course, the idea is how to get your generation, how do you get the younger generation to want to come? People that either don't have kids or are real early in life. And so we thought, well, what do you guys like? I had it right off the bat: booze. So we started Zoo Brew. The idea was we do it at night where you could drink, you could come, we'll have a band. It's a nice park setting, you could dates. And my gosh, last year they sold $250,000 just in booze at these Zoo Brews at night, and
Wow.
immediately cash flow. The other thing we thought about is, you got to be inventive when you can't spend a lot of money. They said it takes $2 million to have a new zoo exhibit. So I thought, well, what do we have that we could sell? Poop. Yeah. Tiger poop. And what we figured out was tiger poop. If you take that and put it around your flowers, white-tailed deer won't get around, because they're the predators and they smell it, and they know that that's a predator, the poop there. And so the prey is prey. They stay away from your flowers. So we were selling these cans of tiger poop for $20 each, and we pulled in about $25,000. So all of those came about as ideas that we tried to open up and say, what could we do to bring more money in so we can take care of the animals better? And that made it really fun. But after 5 or 6 years, then it was really a lot more fundraising for big exhibits and that sort of thing. It became successful, the second largest cultural attraction in the state. And I thought, I wonder what else is out there. And that's when the lottery came about, when the governor appoints somebody retired and said, "Hey, would you be interested in running the lottery?"
Now, what's the biggest challenge of running a zoo? Because I can only imagine when you're dealing with all these exotic animals and everything that you have to go through a lot of legal things and groups and people, rights activists. What's the biggest challenge of running a zoo?
Any business that you run, the biggest challenge, if you have employees, because everybody, when you hire, could be the best employee, but who knows, maybe they go through a divorce, kids go to college, they can't afford something, they get into a gambling problem or whatever. So when you have really good employees and you can keep them motivated and keep a good group around you and they know what they're doing, it really, really works hard. But that's probably the challenge each and every day. Second is you mentioned the safety, but trying to find ways to make the zoo unique. Most people go to a museum once when you're a kid, once when you take your kid, and once when you take your grandkid. So the trick is, how do you keep it interesting enough that you'd want to come back once a month, once a week, and make it fun again? So those were some of the challenges that we had. We had the success. We had a few failures. We had a flamingo take off one day, fly, because we didn't clip the wing good enough when it was a baby, I guess. But we were chasing that all over the city for a couple of days. But I got a call from the Botanical Center, and they had the same problem. They were run by the city. The place was run down, and they said, would you help us come up with some ideas? Well, I love giving ideas, as we're talking tonight. So I got together with them, and I didn't know who the person was sitting over there, but I just started flipping ideas. How about this? How about that? What I didn't realize, as we're talking about sometimes you fail, is that the person sitting over there was the Des Moines Register editorial writer. Now, not the little editorials, but the half-page deal that if you're a public employee, you probably will be fired if your name's in that column. And the headline was, "What do big thinkers think on how to save the Botanical Center?" Oh. And the first one, the big headline was, "Grow a marijuana display." Buy a Venus flytrap big enough to suck down a cow, and all these different things. But the organizers are the people who are looking for the ideas thought, geez, this guy didn't get fired for doing this. This was crazy ideas. They didn't use any of it. I failed in all my ideas, but it inspired them to do some others. And that's what being around creative people is, for me, is really, really exciting. And the zoo, any zookeeper has a heart. I mean, the starting wages of zookeepers are $19,000 to $20,000. So
wow.
They do it not because they're making money. They do it because they love animals and they want to survive species. So that made it a lot of fun, and it was a great give back for the community.
Now, you talked about employees and about employee retention and everything about, everyone has their own thing where, it's tough to get good people to join your company and then stay with your company. What have you found out through your career about finding people who genuinely care and keeping those people around? Because our dad owns McDonald's restaurants, and his big thing is finding, really good people and then figuring out ways to keep them around, because good people bring more good people. So what have you found to get employees and keep those good employees to stay with you?
One of the things that Heritage did, which I never understood, but I had my heart in the company, was that they showed the financials every month. They showed you where we were. Hey, we're down 3%, so you felt like you were part of the company. And then they did profit sharing so that if we made more money, they knew how much they had. And of course, they had to stick around the other, so they had incentives to stick around. So we all made a lot of money with it, but we understood what was important there. And also, if a customer service rep got mad and hung up on somebody or yelled at somebody, it wasn't the bosses that had to say anything. It was the other employees, because you're hurting me, man. Don't be doing that. What can we do to help you here? So I think building the team and rewarding the team, and it doesn't always have to be financial. I learned from a banker who used to work at Meredith Corporation. He sends out 2 or 3 thank you notes or congratulations notes every day. He looks in the paper, sees somebody that he knows did something cool or got an award. He hand writes a note and sends it to him. And that made a bigger impact on me than anything, because everybody sends emails today. So when you get something that's handwritten, it just seems so much more genuine. So just going up and down the hallways and looking and say, hey, I heard you had a good day today. Congratulations. No money, no anything else. Just saying that, just being recognized does make a big difference.
That's a great message. And, a lot of people nowadays, all they need is a little recognition, and that goes a long ways, like you said. So talk a little bit about then getting into the lottery. You were appointed by the governor to go do that?
Yeah, the governor appoints, and then I had to go through a Senate confirmation. I had to do that 3 times. You only get a 4-year term.
Really?
In the lottery, I think lottery directors' average life is 1.5 years. So really political, because it's usually the highest paying job in the governor's staff, because it brings in so much money. And it pretty much sells itself. People like to gamble. And the reason that states, the old days, the mafia, organized crime had all the numbers games, and you didn't know whether they were fixed or not. Well, by having the states run them, you try to keep it good and honest. And so I like the interesting thing, but I tell you, I could say, I'll bet you $5 this microphone is going to blow up, and I could probably sell $100,000 if you get these things rolling. People love to gamble.
Uh-huh.
And if they like to gamble, the governor kept telling me, just make sure the darn thing's fair and honest. And so it was a lot of fun because I gave away over $1 billion while I was at the lottery, not just our state.
Is the lottery run by the states in every state, or do some is Powerball a company, or is it a state that runs Powerball, or is it just
Good question. All states run it by a law that was passed when they restarted lotteries in the 50s. Each state had to approve and do their own lottery. We kind of interchange. If we find a good scratch game we like that worked well, we'll give that maybe to Minnesota or Ohio or California or whoever. So we work closely there. But in the 90s, we wanted to find the lottery directors got together and said, we need a game that has a bigger jackpot. And New York could sell big jackpots because they had a lot of people playing, a big state, right? So Iowa, Minnesota, Kansas, smaller states got together, and 7 states started Powerball. And it was so successful. What they did was pool their money. You spent $1 on a Powerball ticket in those days. 50 cents of it went to the jackpot. And the game was designed to have big jackpots. You didn't win much underneath. You know, if you want to play and win $5, $10, $50, you play a scratch game. But this game was designed for big jackpots, for those big dreamers, rather than people that like slots where they win, lose, win,
Yeah.
lose more. So they started Powerball. So there's about 3 or 4 games, Powerball, Mega Millions, that are pooled money between states, but each state runs their own. So we sent the money when I was working for the lottery to the multi-state lottery. And when we sent it to them, then whoever won, they would send the money back out to whichever state had winners that week. So it was very unpredictable. It was a tough business model because you never knew whether you'd have a jackpot winner or not. And you had to design the game with a number of balls and a number of numbers on each ball so that you had enough winners that people would play, but not enough that you couldn't get the big jackpots. And that was some good calculations. Where a scratch ticket, if we buy 100,000 scratch tickets, we place in so many big tickets, so many medium, so many low. You know exactly what your profit margin is on a scratch ticket.
Now, how long did you work at the lottery before you realized that there was some fishy stuff going on with Eddie Tipton? And this is when we're going to get into the big thing, the big bust here. What was your first thing that kind of said, something's weird going on here?
I was only there about 1.5 years.
Oh, wow.
And we get jackpots all the time. And just happened that I got a call New Year's Eve. Hey, we had a jackpot winner yesterday. Okay, no big deal, but nobody came in to claim it. And 2 or 3 months later, no one came in and claim it. You have 1 year in Iowa to claim the jackpots.
What's the average time that people usually come in to get it?
You know, they usually don't come in right away because if on a big jackpot, this was a $10 million cash, $16 million annuitized.
Wow.
You want to talk to your lawyer, talk to your accountant, that sort of thing. But when it got to be 3 or 4 months, we figured somebody threw it in the trash or dog ate it. You get all these excuses. So we kept barking, and at 6 months, we started getting the fraudulent questions. Oh, I think my husband bought it, and the clerk stole it. We got a lot of unhired lawyers, But we had the videotape of the exchange and the audio of the exchange, so we pretty much knew that it was a pretty good sized guy that had a little bit of a southern drawl. But so when we had a woman call and say, I bought the ticket, we'd say, okay, thank you very much. Or if we had somebody say, hey, I bought it, and we could say, was it a quick pick or was it an easy play where you let the computer pick it? Or did you do it manually? They'd tell us one way, we knew what it was. I mean, the lottery tickets are really, really secure. Well, we even had one lady call and say, hey, my husband's an organized crime. He's a truck driver. I haven't seen him for 3 months. I know he's got it. So if they come in, check it out. Because
she turned in her husband.
Yeah, she turned in. I mean, you get the craziest calls.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it was 11 months. We got a call from a lawyer in Canada, and he's back to having a good company culture. We trained our folks that if you see something doesn't feel right, say something. And the front desk said, this guy sounds like he had the right serial number and things that no one else could know. And so this sounds pretty particular. So they sent it up to our public relations security folks, and they started asking questions. And the guy said, I bought the ticket. Well, what were you wearing? They asked, and they said, well, it was a tweed pants or tweed coat, and I'm 68 and I'm kind of frail. And they said, ding, ding, ding. And our CIO said, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like the person we have on tape. And This lawyer didn't even hear that. He just said, well, it was me. I'm buying it. I'm going to send you the ticket. You send me the money. Well, sounds a little fishy. So we basically called the DCI and the Attorney General's office, said if he comes in, let's arrest him. Well, he didn't show up. Another guy showed up and said an hour and 40 minutes before the ticket was to expire, and sent it through 2 more lawyers that they hired in Des Moines, who was going to get $500,000, along with the guy in New York who was going to get $500,000. They find out later. Said, I want our money. And we said, we got to tell us who bought it. And they said, no, we're not going to. What? Ding, ding, ding. Well, we argued back and forth, and all of a sudden they just said, okay, we don't want it. Our client doesn't want the publicity. You got to be kidding. I don't think Warren Buffett would turn down $16.5 million.
Yeah. And can you remain anonymous in Iowa or no?
Good point. The crazy part is there are 6 states that you can claim tickets for lotteries anonymously. If you'd have bought that in those states, they'd have been able to cash it on the spot, but we wouldn't allow it. So we went back and forth. We started an investigation, took us 3 years, and ultimately found out that he was working for an organization, which was a vendor organization, the company that when we talk about sending money in for Powerball and the others, that same company, he was the security director, and he was the person that designed the computer. Powerball, as you know, is drawn by balls, so it's got a lot of different security features that way. This was drawn by a computer. He wrote the code, he packaged the code, and then he maintained the computers. And we ultimately busted him, his brother, and his best friend. All 3 had been claiming jackpot since 2005. And the ticket itself started the investigation. Once we got to his name and his best buddy's name and his brother's name, it was just a little Iowa, story. Everybody was saying across the nation, all the other lotteries saying, just be quiet. Because, this is a $80 billion industry. If you get this wrong, people won't trust the lottery. They won't buy. You're gambling with our $80 billion across the U.S. So it was a little nerve wracking and pretty crazy. But what really broke it nationally was the guy named Eddie Tipton went to trial on his first trial, and he was convicted of he must have bought the ticket. We couldn't figure out the smoking gun and how he did it, but he must have bought it. And if he bought it, it was his best friend that won. He must have, and the jury bought it. And so they found him guilty. So they brought in his brother to testify. Now, here's the craziest thing you ever heard, because Eddie was originally figured out because this store was only one of 4 in the entire state. There are 2,400 retailers. Only 4 had video and audio. And the video, you couldn't tell it was him, but the audio, when we released it, the DCI released it in the final efforts to see if we could crack the case. Everybody said, wait a minute, that's Eddie Tipton. Well, when he's found guilty, they believed that he did it. We could not know how he did it, but just that he programmed it and it was his best friend. He must have done it. They said, yeah, let's give him 5 years, 2 counts, 5 years each. And his brother came up to testify, and his brother said, well, that couldn't have been my brother. That guy bought 2 hot dogs. He ain't a hot dog guy. Everybody looked at Eddie, and here's a big guy, 300, 400 pounds, thinking, wait a minute. And the AP thought it was so funny. They put it out on the national wires, and it went back to his brother who testified, his hometown. And an FBI agent said, wait a minute, that brother, we were investigating him for money laundering, and he told us that he won the Colorado lottery.
Oh.
By the time it was all done, they told us to check it out. And here's the lesson of all of this for anybody watching that does social media or use your cell phone. First place that somebody goes, if you're committing anything illegal, the first place they go is your social media. So we by the time we had probable cause, they got all of his social media contacts. So all of your friends that are on your social media, we took all of those names. They take your cell phone, look at all your contacts and numbers you've called, and they can go back, in this case, I think almost 4 years, and they could tell where he was standing almost all these different minutes we were talking about buying the ticket and all that. Take all of that, and then we cross-reference those with jackpot winners of $600 and more from lotteries across the nation, and immediately found 5 jackpots that they had claimed.
Wow.
And so ultimately then found the smoking gun. They basically, when you have 3 people, somebody's going to have loose lips. They say, do you want to be the defendant or do you want to be the witness? And one of the 3 said, okay, I want to be the witness. And so I don't have to go to jail for as much time.
Mm-hmm.
gave up the goods, and we got it all. We got confessions from all three.
Wow. And now, do you work with the government does like the FBI get involved, or who is it just you guys like on your own figuring this out, or who gets involved to solve it?
Well, it went through, there were so many people involved that helped crack the case. It started off with our lottery employees who thought it seemed weird. We did some investigation. We had all some of the evidence, like we kept the video for those 2 or 3 years, make sure we didn't lose that, and all of the data of when it was bought, all that. Then the AG, Attorney General, and the DCI for Iowa got involved. But when Eddie was convicted on the first one, we thought it might go, when we started seeing other states, that it could go federal. So we contacted the FBI, and they were involved in terrorism and all that sort of thing. So the Attorney Generals and the DCIs of all of those other states kind of together cracked the case and put it together. So it was a real team effort. And you'll hear a lot about Rob Sand, who was a prosecutor, was phenomenal, a young guy that just really, really kicked it in circumstantial evidence and how to get a conviction and then get confessions. And the DCI agents that did it in both Wisconsin, Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Iowa. So it was a heck of a deal. I'd never, ever want to go through it. So that's why I'm kind of we wrote a book I wanted it to be factual so people see. And I do a lot of public speeches, like to business officials and CPAs and that sort of thing, just saying, make sure you have checks and balances in your organization. Because we all hear about churches. Well, talk about McDonald's, what employee puts a hand in the till, takes something out. Unless you have the checks and balances, 2 people are balancing out the drawers, or you don't write a PO and a purchase order and pay the checks. If only one person does that, you're destined to have fraud at some point. Wow. And they always say, that was Aunt Matilda. I never, she was the last person I'd expect. You hear that over and over and over, but didn't realize that Matilda got into the Oxycontin when she got her hip done. And pushes.
So the big guy at the counter, it was Eddie Tipton that bought the ticket, or was it somebody else?
It was Eddie Tipton that bought it. We enhanced so we could see the car. He rented a car, which tied to the car. We could tell that. The voice was the same. He used his credit card in a couple of places that were close, but the cell phone record showed he was right up in that area, and that he talked to these other 2 buddies that tried to help cash it so that it wasn't his name on the check. And they were just like schoolgirls chatting when they looked at the cell phone records.
Oh, I bet. And did he rig the number so that it matched his ticket, or did he get a ticket and rig the number after that?
Eddie Tipton was pretty smart, and he's pretty dumb in his own way. First off, we'll talk about the smart things first. He wrote a code. He said, hey, we should do these draws. He convinced this multi-state lottery organization to write the code. And when he wrote the code, he put in 4 parameters. One was, had to be on one date a year, the number of days in a year. But anyway, only one time a year would this all kick in. It had to be after 8 p.m. Central Time, had to be on one of his computers. When he did all of that, when all of those came together, there's this thing called a seed. If you play video games, you get randomness by something being really random, and all of a sudden you get a seed. But once you know the seed, you can pretty much predict the numbers. So he could do it. So most people would look at the code and think that it was random, but when we got it all said and done, it wasn't, and he got busted. So that's how he did it. Now, how'd he get caught? Well, first off, he bought the ticket in Iowa, which does not allow anonymous purchasers to claim a ticket. He went into only one of 2,400 stores, or there are only 4 of 2,400 stores at the time that had both video and audio. The audio is what absolutely caught him when it was all said and done. And he spread out to other people. So there were like 5 or 6 people that cashed in the tickets for his brother and his best friend and him. And, as we say, loose lips, at some point somebody cracks or somebody asks a question.
Describe.
If it had just not gotten greedy and went after the big money, because he could have probably cashed smaller checks forever and no one had ever noticed.
Oh, yeah. Do you know the facility where the computers were housed? Is there nothing there that would prevent somebody from doing this? Or how did he get away? How did he get away with that? Because I can only imagine.
Well, in any organization, you got to trust somebody, don't you? You know, you get the person that writes the checks, the person who's your accountant, the external accountant that comes in and does your audit. You got to trust somebody. And the organization was small, state-run organizations that were pooling their money together so that these guys could pool this money and allocate it back and forth. Then, states didn't want to allocate a lot of money, so they didn't have a lot of people. If you don't have a lot of people, then he had access to writing the code, compiling the code, and supervising the code. And that's not a good combination. I forgot to say the other fun part that was one of the reasons he got caught was Bigfoot.
I was about to bring that up. How does Bigfoot come in?
His brother, we found out after his brother was found out, and they all three started talking. We started talking and confessing. His brother's a Bigfoot hunter, and that's how we found the guys that cashed in the Colorado tickets and the Kansas tickets were Bigfoot buddies. But the funny part was the reason remember I told you an FBI agent said, wait a minute, we were investigating for money fraud.
Mm-hmm.
He had won he paid this guy named Alexander Hicks, a Bigfoot hunter, with him to go cash this ticket, and then gave him the money. And when he gave him the money, he gave it to him in sequential $100 bills. So he didn't want to tell his wife about it. So he went to a fireworks dealer and said, hey, would you exchange some $100 bills with me? And the fireworks dealer got nervous and contacted the FBI. So that's how the FBI. So when they went to investigate him, he was in the hospital. Guess why he was in the hospital? He had fallen out of a tree stand hunting Bigfoot.
Crazy. You can't make things like this up.
I was going to say, this sounds...
So he was on some good drip, whatever was in his drip. And he said, yeah, I won that in the lottery. But, the guy said, well, okay, won it in the lottery and went on. But then 10 years later, when the same guy's up talking about hot dogs, because if Eddie hadn't bought 2 hot dogs, we'd have never cracked that case either.
Wow. This sounds like a documentary or like a movie. Has anybody came to you guys, or has anyone done anything with it to shoot a documentary?
I'm under legal obligation not to admit that, but I think hopefully within a year or so, you might see, Tiger King created a lot of interest in crazy stories like this. So
yep.
We'll see if something comes out of it. We've had a lot of fun. I've been doing some podcasts with it. If something comes together, talking to the people that were involved, but the bottom line story, when it's all said and done, is that the person that committed the crime is in prison for up to 25 years. He'll get out here in the next year or so, but the guy, you do the crime, you do the time, and you can solve it by just having checks and balances. If you have good policies, people then don't have the temptation because they're afraid they're going to get caught. But once they get by with a little one, they'll do a little bigger one the next time, a little bit, and ultimately they'll get caught.
Yeah. So what things changed after the Eddie Tipton case? What things did you guys do to make sure this won't happen again?
Well, the lotteries got together with this vendor and worked to separate the duties. Now somebody, immediately took any Eddie's computers that he built for that reason in any of the states out of service and hired somebody to do a third one and had 2 or 3 checks so that the same person that wrote it isn't the person drawing the numbers, so they know how it's going to work, those sort of things. So it's, they're pretty confident that it's strange, but I'll tell you what, when you're talking billions and billions, so think about it. Most people don't realize the lottery business. How much does the NFL bring in a year? 10, 12 billion dollars. All of sports brings about $20 billion. Music's about 10, movies 10 to 12 billion with a B. Add them all together, still doesn't amount to $80 billion plus, which is what the lotteries take in every single year.
Wow.
So when you're dealing with that big of money, you're always going to have somebody saying, I wonder how I could win that Powerball, or how to, and it isn't whether it's a computer or whatever. Everybody's tried different things. There were 2 big lottery scandals in the 90s, and out of the billions of draws, there'd only be 3 or 4 that I know of that anyone, said, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. One was they put latex paint in ping pong balls in Pennsylvania back in 1980 and let it coat on the inside. So all but the 4s and the 8s bounced down below, and the 4s and 8s bounced up. And so they bet all the combos with 4s and 8s. But they got caught because the mafia also used those numbers for their underground betting. And they saw the draw and said, wait a minute, something's wrong, and busted them. The other one, which I thought was ingenious, was in Milan, where, how innocent is this? It seems random. You have kids drawing the balls. Well, when it would get tight and they couldn't find kids, they'd have the nephews and nieces of the draw officers, and the draw officers would then shave the balls so the ones they wanted to draw would be either smooth, or they'd put them in the freezer so that when they reached in there, they'd find something hot or cold and pull those out. So
Wow.
I thought those were pretty ingenious, but Eddie's was too, but those are few and far between. I still, the safe is so much safer than trying to do sports betting out of Malta or some other place, because you don't know who's running those. You can always go down to the lottery office and raise Cain with that, or call the governor or somebody and say, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah. Do you think the lottery is, I mean, obviously people know the odds, but which like out of the games, which one has the highest chances of you actually coming away with some money, some decent money?
I'll give you my theory. It's truly random, but Powerball is these Powerball Mega Millions, any lotto game, they're all designed to have bigger jackpots. And so your odds are a lot less. 50% of the money goes to the prizes. The highest prize payout is the highest dollar scratch ticket. A $50, $40, $30 scratch ticket pays out 75 to 80%. A $1 scratch ticket pays out 62 to 65. So remember 50, 62, but you get a lot of repetitive buys. It's the higher price ones cost you more, but the higher the price, the more times you'll win. But the odds you can look up on every lottery has the odds and how many big prizes have been won. If you do your research, you can get a little bit of indication, but I've never seen anybody that has a foolproof way unless they try to rig it some way. And scratch tickets especially are really, really, really tough to rig. Those are really scrutinized, and the way they're set up and go in there. I'll tell you what I do. I take most scratch tickets are designed to have at least one winner in between 4 and 10 tickets. So if I have $20, I divide it by 2, or I divide it by 10, and I'll buy 10 $2 tickets. If I have $100, I'll buy 10 $10 tickets. Now, I will usually win on one of those tickets, but the odds are, because it's a 75%, 60 to 75% payout, is that I will only win 70% of my $20. I'll usually come away with 10 to 14 bucks. Once in a while, I might hit a big one, but very rarely, because the odds of scratch tickets that only pay out that 65 to 70%. It never will pay more than 100% on scratch tickets. Now, the lotto games can, but the odds are so high, it very rarely ever will.
Huh. Now, I was reading on the thing, it said you were the president of the North American Association of State and Provincial Lotteries. So what does that encapsulate? Is that just all the states?
Basically, the directors are all on the board of directors of the North American Lottery Association, which includes Canada and all the lotteries. And so each director, so there's you get together at a conference with 50 people around the table and try to make policy decisions and government decisions, that sort of thing. So I, by seniority, became president of that organization for a year. And that's really fun because I really got to see what everybody else does and then take those ideas, bring those back to our state for trying to make our lottery better.
Now, was this the one with Eddie Tipton? Was that the biggest one you've ever seen happen while you were involved with the lottery, or was there another one?
No, CBS said it was the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. And so we stuck by that as we wrote the book and tell the story.
So now for people that won it correctly, for people that did win it without cheating, because I'm assuming you gave the big checks out all the time to people who actually won it. Did it ruin their lives? Like people, there's a show, The Lottery Ruined My Life or whatever. Is it like that, or do people make smart decisions after they win the lottery?
There's a lottery ruined my life, and there's a lottery bought my home, or something like that. They go out and they show them buying homes. No, here's the rule of thumb. If you didn't know how to handle your money before you won the lottery, and you don't get a lawyer and accountant when you win a big one with the lottery, you're not going to have any money in a year, 2 years, 3 years. We always recommended get a lawyer, get an accountant. The other one, which we would always tell winners, call us back and tell us how can we make the experience better or whatever. And an interesting one came up, and a lot of them said, tell the winners, wait 30 days before you make the big purchase. So I just won $1 million. I'm going to go get that red Lamborghini. Well, 30 days later, it might be blue because you bought it in the excitement. That was the only one on the lot. So they said, I wish I'd have waited 30. I still would have had the same money. I still would have probably bought something big. I just wish I'd have waited 30 days because it had put a little more in there. But I think the big winners that I know that have done really well with it, the rule of thumb, they put a third in for their kids, put a trust in for their kids, a third for them, just live off the interest, and a third for charity. And then you'll always have it. You just take the interest off it, and then you always have those that just go out and take the money and spend it. Usually if somebody showed up, if they won today and they show up tomorrow, you just kind of shake your head. But I always said, we as a state, I don't want the state telling you how you spent your money. You bought it, you won it. You spend it however you want, but here's a rule of thumb of what we know people who've been successful and had money for a long time have done.
When you were in there, did it seem like there was a certain type of person that won the lottery? Was it a lot of men, a lot of women, a lot of age? Was it just completely random?
It really is completely random. You see people who shouldn't spend the money, and we always try to give them 1-800-bets off when that happened. But no, and you'd be surprised because we had a sheriff that came in every morning before he went to work. We had lawyers that that play, and then of course the people who play Powerball are occasional players. People who like slot machines, people you'd see at a casino, usually are playing the high-priced scratch tickets, and that's a very big generalization. People play for different reasons. Now that I'm not working there, I can play. I haven't won anything big, so it really is a pretty good system of randomness and a lot of luck of the draw.
What's the most you've won?
Yeah, that's a good question. What's the most you've won?
I think I won $50 on an Instaplay ticket. I think that's the most. I've lost more than I've won.
I'm surprised to even hear
But
that
I do have a Powerball ticket for Wednesday night. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's it up to now?
It's in the $300-400 million deal, I think.
Wow.
I don't pay that much close attention, and I play it so randomly. It's just kind of, if I'm in a store and I see it, I may think, hey, what the heck?
Yeah, might as well.
But you suppose there'll be an investigation if I do win?
Yeah.
After the taxes and fees, how much does a person take home? Like, say it's at 300 million or whatever.
Yep. General rule of thumb, I mean, it's your tax bracket, and the highest tax bracket you're going to spend, it depends on your state taxes too. Usually we took out 25% federal and 5% state right out of the chute. So you got to check, you got that, because if you won $1 million and you went out and spent it all, and then next April you're trying to figure out how am I going to pay my taxes, you're in trouble. So the state, is part of setting up a lottery, most states take out federal and state taxes right out of the chute. But usually you'll have to pay, if on a big one, you'll have to pay more because your tax bracket will be higher. You'll probably pay closer to 35-40% federal and 5 to 10% state. So about half your money in cash.
Wow.
But I'd gladly pay it if I could win it.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, how long were you with the lottery for then?
10 years.
10 years
and 11 months. Yeah. It was a fun gig. What I couldn't believe, because I'm kind of an anti-government, everybody cusses the government, they waste money on. I was amazed at how dedicated government workers that I worked around were, how cool they were, how much fun they were, how creative they were. So it really was a pretty fun deal. But every day when you're a public official, you worry about, remember that old story on grow marijuana display at the Botanical Center?
Yeah.
Every day you worry that you're going to make a statement and it may be your last, or a weird winner like the Eddie Tipton might come in, and if you don't handle it right, you're done. I think of one, here's a good example, having a good day and it's noon, and someone says, do you need to take that lottery winner off the website? And I said, why would we take anything off the website? We're transparent. They said, well, I think he just got picked up. $1 million Powerball winner got picked up. It was a great story. He worked as a cook in a large packing plant in the cafeteria, and he won $1 million. So he started his own catering company. He an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And he one night got busted for being with an underage girl, feeding her booze from the catering truck. Okay, well, that's not good. But as you started reading all the social media, he had a little purple pill with him, or blue pill with him. And then someone said, well, he just got off the sex offender list for 10 years. They said, we're not going to have him at our meeting. I said, what do you mean? Yeah, you booked him to cater our annual meeting for the employees and to tell his success story. Oh. I mean, those you get, you'd have one or two of those a month.
Yeah.
But just like anything else, somebody's got to handle it. So you handle it fair, honest. Just like how when we thought something was wrong with Eddie, you do what you can and investigate till you make sure the games are fair and honest.
I didn't think, when I think of the lottery or gambling at all, I don't think of the government running it. So when you're talking about it being a government job, it sounds very strange, and maybe it doesn't to other people, but to me, I just never thought of the lottery being a government-run thing. Like, you don't think of that, the government running.
Best job in the world. I tell you, we could find employees, so especially the route where they take the tickets out and check the bins and everything when you go into a convenience store, because most of those folks work for a beer truck or a Pepsi or Coke, and they had to work weekends and nights when everything was out. And here's a job, 8 to 5, 5 days a week, great money, great benefits, great retirement, state of Iowa. They're around forever, and great workers. So you could have the pick of the litter from those other jobs to big success.
Now, does the lottery benefit the state at all, right? Because I know in Minnesota they donate a lot of the money to the national parks and stuff like
Yep.
that. What does it do for the states?
Each state gives their money someplace different. We gave it to it. Ours went directly to the general fund to offset taxes. But basically, the lottery business model is that you usually have about 60 to 65% of the monies, when you average everything out, go to prizes. You got to give money back, and if you don't give money to players, nobody's going to play. So
Yeah.
about 65% of the if for every dollar spent goes back to the player. You have about 2% that goes to the vendor who runs the gaming machines and prints the tickets and that sort of thing. It's usually 7 to 8% goes to run the lottery, employees, overhead, heat, lights, all that sort of thing. So profit margin is about 22 to 24% in any given state. And that's the profit that goes back to that. So for every dollar spent, 22% goes back to the state, and they can put it in education, veterans funds, parks, whatever. And it's up to the state legislature.
Wow. So there's positives too, that when you buy a lottery ticket, part of your money is going to benefit something.
Yeah, that, we all say that. Think about it. If you're playing the lottery, you're not carrying, because if you want to give to the park service, you could send the whole dollar.
Yeah.
You're playing because you want to win. You
Oh,
only say,
yeah.
guys, this is going to a great cause, because you don't want your wife to think that you're gambling your money away. You're helping everybody else. It's a good reason if you lose, but when you play, that's why I always say, when you play the lottery, play with your head, not above your head, because you're taking a chance. So use your extra pop money, or don't empty your bank account.
No.
Terry, I was going to ask you, how many years did Eddie, his brother, and his best friend end up going to prison for?
So the guy that gave it up first, once we got the smoking gun and could figure out the code, was his best friend. He said, okay, yeah, this is how we did it, blah, blah, blah. He got probation I believe, for 2 years.
Wow.
So he never went to prison, but I think he had an ankle bracelet for quite a while. And he had to pay restitution on all the money he did. His brother got 52 days, 25 days, 52 days. Eddie and his brother cut a deal because his brother had a wife and family. Eddie said, I'll take the rap. And so his brother got like 52 days, was a felon when it's all said and done. And he has to also sell a bunch of stuff, pay restitution. Eddie got up to 25 years.
Wow.
And he will serve probably 4 to 6 with good behavior.
Wow.
And he's in prison right now, which of course with COVID is running rampant. So, you hope that he can rehabilitate and he gets out and is safe and sound. But
what year did this all happen?
He started taking jackpots with his brothers and friend in 2005, and ours was 2010, and we convicted him in 2017 or 18.
Wow, so not that long.
So you got away with it for a long time. It sounds
2017, 4 to 5 years, because he's serving Wisconsin, Colorado, and Iowa together in Iowa, and I think he's out, and he has first shot at probation in 4 or 5 years, so he probably has a good chance with to relaxed rules and all the things. And he didn't commit a murder, but hopefully I wouldn't want to be in a month. That would rehabilitate me pretty fast.
Yeah. Let's hear these 2 ideas, because you said you had 2 ideas, the $1 million ideas. Let's hear these. I'm excited.
You ready?
Yep.
So we started Mega Millions. I was coming home and I looked up. You know how when you see the moon, you can just barely see a little thumbnail, just a little piece. And I saw that dark spot, and I thought, we were talking about how do we promote the jackpot uniquely. And I thought, what if we could get a laser or a great big spotlight and project the Mega Millions logo and the jackpot on the moon?
Wow. Nobody
owns the moon right now. We could stake a real estate claim and make it our own billboard for the world to see. There's one. So there's a good one. And then the second one is, I had a call from another little small town, said, hey, we live a quarter of a mile off the interstate route, exit 88. And we'd like to have you help us try to get the 60,000 cars that drive by in to at least buy gas or do something. So started brainstorming. I thought, well, and you're on the interstate, you need gas, but almost every exit has gas. You need food. Almost every exit has a McDonald's or some other kind of restaurant. What's the third thing you need? Restrooms, toilets. But not just any, you want clean. Moms would love to know where the cleanest restroom is, and families when you're able to pull in.
Yep.
So I said, buy a big Morton building, put 80 stalls in there. Get with Kohler, make one country, make one modern, get all these different styles so you can do some research. Have Charmin provide the toilet paper so you could research what kind of toilet papers people like. You have your own market research there. Sell Tootsie Rolls, Baby Ruths, have T-shirts. I got pooped out in Menlo, Iowa. I got PO'd in Menlo, Iowa. I mean, have an outhouse for pictures. You have some loungers because it is a restroom, have all these different things. In fact, when you launch it, you get free publicity because you'd have a king come in and have him sit on the throne. But the cool part was, in the old days, they had these things called Burma shave signs, where they had signs all over as you were driving along. It was exit 88. So we said, let's get a whole bunch of signs all over the world to say, urinate at exit 88. They didn't want to be known as the poop capital of the world, so it didn't sell. But I'm telling you, somewhere along, all of the late night shows would all be going nuts on in social media on the cleanest restrooms in the world. Everybody would be stopping by, and you could have so much fun with that.
It is a genius idea, and I mean, we go on a lot of road trips, and it's like you don't want to stop at the gas station bathroom because it looks like something out of a horror movie,
especially a truck station gas station.
Yeah.
We've seen some bad restrooms.
Oh yeah, we've seen some dirt. Here's the thing though. Tourist attractions though, if there's something to pull off for, why wouldn't you? If you've been sitting in the car all day, why wouldn't you pull over and check it out? Even if you don't have to poop.
All sorts of pictures, so you get social media out of it. I mean, the outhouse, and you got a place for the animals to go. So
Iowa does have that. What is it? The
world's largest truck stop.
Yeah. This is the world's cleanest restrooms.
I love it. Those both could be $1 million ideas, and I'm surprised no one's taken you up on it yet.
Well, at some point they will. That's the most fun of creating a lot of ideas, and I've got all sorts of ideas and thoughts. If I was back at your age and have the energy and the smiles and enthusiasm you have right now, I'd do it all over again. It's so much fun.
And that brings us to the best part here, because I want to hear about, I gave you this thing earlier today in an email. If you were 21, or let me rephrase that. What would you go back and tell your 21-year-old self if you could go back right now and talk to your younger version of yourself? What would you say to that person?
Well, the first thing I'd probably do is say, hey, start with whiskey rather than beer at 21. Just drink 21. But I would say two things. I think the two things to success that I found, we talked about there would be some failure, but one is when you're at work or whatever, raise your hand. Say, I'll volunteer for it. So, people who make a lot of money volunteer to do something different that no one else has ever done. And that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it worthwhile. That's what gets them the money to be really, really, really successful. And in a company, the person that advances in any big corporation is the person that somebody says, I got to clean. We need something happening in the back. I'll go clean it. Or, hey, I've got a project. No one else wants it because they know it's dynamite. I'll try it. Those are the people that'll be successful in a company. So I found by raising the hand, I would do that more often by looking for ways to help others by raising my hand, whether it's volunteering in the community or whatever. The second, which I didn't get done, and I see successful people who do really well. I mentioned it when we cashed out at age 40. I found that happiness happens on the way to success, not when you make your goal. And so I always had this urge to do some more, do it again, try it all over again. But I never was taught how to relax, how to take time for myself. Damon John, who's on Shark Tank, we did a deal the other day, and he said that he every day has a list of 6 things that he does for himself. He looks at them before he goes to bed. He wakes up in the morning and said, these are the things I want to do today that are for me, whether that's exercise or whether it's go start another company or whatever it is. And for me, one of those would be figure out a way to be relaxed, whether that's figuring out how to meditate. I haven't figured it out at this age. So I wish I'd have done more of that, of finding more time for myself to be calm.
Sounds like you're saying to enjoy the ride, the whole experience of getting there to your final goal, just enjoying that instead of rushing to get there.
And that's why I do these. I mean, meeting you guys and saying hi and making new friends, man, that's what it's all about. I read the other day that people who live between 65 and 85, the healthiest people, they looked at the traits. The first trait was socialization, that they actually mix it up and learn and see other people. friendships, number 2. Then it was quit smoking, quit drinking. And then it was into the exercise and the other things. So, the idea of meeting and smiling and having some fun with others, especially in these crazy times are what it's all about.
Wow. If that ain't a great message to end it, I don't know what is. So, Terry, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. I have learned a lot, and I think you have some very valuable advice and stories from your variety of different jobs that don't really correlate with each other at all. I mean, going from
that was the best part. I got to go to the next job and never be fired. I've never been fired. I got to do it on my own terms.
Going from TV, going from TV to zoo to the lottery, and I'm sure now you're doing public speaking. Is that right? You're going around. Right. Do you have a website or anything we could plug on here for people that want to find out more about you?
It's pretty easy. Just remember Terry with a T and speak. So terryspeaks.com.
Awesome. Well, everyone, go check out Terry. Again, Terry, thank you very much for coming on here. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I hope we can do something again in the future, or just even talk again, because I know you have a lot of great advice, and we're a couple young bucks here looking to do some crazy stuff, so we're always looking to get advice from people who've done it before, so we really appreciate you coming on here.
Sounds like you're already ahead of the game. You'll be successful. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
I've got a great and then yeah, I remember.
It's not even the shape.
Negative.
Mental. A special effects agency.